Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain had recently stopped, but the city's shiny cobblestones still reflected the cold glow of the street lamps. Each drop that fell had left a damp trail on the old bench where Emily was curled up. Her teeth chattered, her knees trembled beneath her thin blanket, and the smell of damp and dust clung to her worn clothes. At 17, she had already learned that the world didn't care about girls like her. Her mother had left, leaving her alone to face an abusive and indifferent aunt. For months, Emily had slept on that bench every night, absorbing the cold, the contemptuous stares, and the oblivion of everyone who passed by without ever seeing her. Her hands were red and chapped, and her backpack contained everything she owned: a sketchbook, a yellowed photo of her mother, and a faded stuffed toy. That's when he appeared. A massive figure stopped a few steps away. The man wore a black suit, impeccably tailored, and his shoes shone like mirrors in the streetlight. He looked like a master of the world, but when he looked at Emily, a shudder ran through his heart. He knelt slightly, as if not to frighten this fragile creature. "Why do you sleep here alone every night?" he asked, his voice strangely soft for a man of his imposing appearance. Emily looked up warily. Fear was etched in her pupils, but behind it lay a desperate curiosity. She whispered her story: the loss of her mother, the escape from her aunt's home, the hunger and cold that kept her awake every night. The man remained silent. His normally closed and imperturbable face tightened. Then, without warning, tears streamed down his cheeks. Tears of injustice, of impotent anger, and of pure empathy. He had just discovered a truth that no wealth, no success could protect: the utter vulnerability of this young girl, alone in a world that had forgotten her. Emily, for the first time, felt that she wasn't invisible. Her shaky breaths calmed slightly. In the darkness, under the streetlights and the rain-heavy sky, two broken souls met. And in that icy silence, a fragile miracle began to be born. The next morning, the rain had given way to an icy wind that swept through the streets. Emily woke up on her bench, still numb from the night before. Her clothes were soaked and stuck to her skin. Every movement reminded her of the pain of missing shelter, a real hot meal, a kind look. But this morning, something had changed. The man from the previous evening was there, sitting on the edge of the bench. His dark suit contrasted with the gray of the city, but it wasn't his wealth that struck Emily, it was the intensity of his gaze, the mixture of concern and sincerity she had never seen in anyone. "Emily," he said softly, "I want to help you." Emily stared at him in disbelief. Promises were easy for adults to make. But in his voice, there was no pity or judgment. Just a genuine desire to change her life. Why do you care about me?" she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Because you shouldn't be alone in this world." "No one deserves that," he replied, gently taking her hand. Emily felt a chill run through her, but it wasn't just the cold, it was the spark of unexpected hope. The man led her to his car. Each step on the wet sidewalk seemed to take her further from a painful past and closer to a future she'd never dared to imagine. In the car, Emily took in the luxury around her. The leather seats, the sweet scent of air freshener, and the tinted windows created a world completely different from her own. Yet she didn't feel overwhelmed by the wealth, she felt protected, finally. Jonathan, the man who had found her, didn't speak much during the journey. His silence was filled with attention. He seemed to be analyzing Emily's every shudder, every expression, as if to understand what she had been through. "At home, there's a place for you where you'll be safe," he said finally. "Not just for the night, for a long time," he added with a slight smile. Emily felt a tear roll down her cheek. She'd never heard those words from anyone real. Promises weren't empty words. In that car, for the first time, she felt they carried weight. When they arrived home, Jonathan showed her his room, small but warm, with a clean blanket, clothes that fit her, and a soft light. Emily fell to her knees, clutching the blanket to her, unable to speak. Jonathan stood at the door, silent but attentive. That day, Emily realized her life had changed. It wasn't just money or security that mattered, it was the first real attention she'd received in years. And for Jonathan, every shy smile from Emily, every tear finally released, was a reminder that wealth was only valuable if it could change lives. In this house, behind its imposing walls and massive doors, an improbable but profound bond was born, that of two broken souls who would learn to rebuild themselves together. The first few days in Jonathan's house were strange for Emily. Every sound, every piece of furniture, every object seemed to belong to another world. She had never seen a library filled with books, nor a kitchen where everything was clean and fragrant. Everything was too perfect for her, and yet, something about that perfection reassured her. Jonathan, meanwhile, watched Emily with silent attention. He had hired a housekeeper to look after her, but he preferred to remain discreet, letting Emily adjust to her new surroundings at her own pace. Every morning, he prepared her a hot breakfast and made sure she had everything she needed to feel safe. "You can stay as long as you like," he said one morning, sitting at the table with her. "And if you ever get scared or want to talk, I'm here." Emily nodded, still wary. She had never known stability or consistent kindness. But she felt in that voice a truth that no lie could hide. Little by little, she began to explore the house. Each room revealed a little more comfort and warmth: thick rugs, plush armchairs, carefully framed family photos. But it wasn't these objects that touched her most, it was the lack of judgment and the enveloping calm. For the first time in a long time, she could breathe. Jonathan, for his part, found himself smiling more often. Seeing Emily giggle shyly at a little bird on the windowsill or marvel at a simple coloring book overwhelmed him. He realized that money had never been true power was restoring hope to those who had lost it. One afternoon, he took her to a nearby park, holding her hand to reassure her. Emily watched the children playing, the families laughing, and a strange feeling rose within her, that she could finally be part of the world, not just survive on its margins. "You see," Jonathan said softly, "there are safe places, and people who want the best for you. You don't need to hide on a bench anymore." Emily smiled weakly, a tear rolling down her cheek. For the first time, she believed that maybe, life could be good again. But behind this glimmer of hope, Emily's past remained present, ready to remind her at every moment how hard survival had been. Jonathan knew he had to act with patience. Healing a wounded soul required more than a roof and food, it required time, trust, and constant attention. And that day, in that quiet park, a silent promise formed between them: no matter the hurts of the past, they would rebuild a future together where Emily would never again know the fear of the night. The next morning, Emily woke up in her room for the third time since she'd arrived. The soft light filtered through the curtains, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel cold or hungry. She stretched slowly, her muscles still sore from nights spent on the bench, and stared at the small photo of her mother on the bedside table. Jonathan entered with a reassuring smile. "Today you're going to see something else," he said simply. Emily followed him in his car. Every turn, every building seemed to remind her how limited her life had been until then. And now, it all belonged to her, or rather, she had the right to interfere in it. They arrived in front of a small, modern high school. Children were laughing in the courtyard, and the teachers seemed attentive to each one. Emily felt her heart pound. She hadn't received a proper education for several years, and the idea of having to mix with other teenagers terrified her as much as it excited her. "I'll stay with you until you feel ready," Jonathan murmured, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Emily nodded. Jonathan's presence gave her the courage to move forward. She took her first steps into the courtyard, clutching her bag to her. The other students' stares were curious, but Emily, though intimidated, felt a strange strength rise within her, that of no longer being invisible. The first few days were difficult. Some students made fun of her simple clothes and her shyness, but Emily began to rise with more determination after each challenge. Jonathan came to pick her up in the evening and encouraged her without ever rushing her, letting her talk about her days, her small victories, and her fears. One afternoon, as they were walking home, Emily stopped abruptly and said, "Thank you, for everything. I've never never had anyone like you in my life." Jonathan felt a lump form in his throat. The girl's fragile voice, filled with sincerity and gratitude, awakened emotions he had long repressed. Since losing his own sister years ago, he had isolated himself in his world of business and wealth. And now Emily was tearing down his walls, stone by stone. "Emily, you are strong, more than you know," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "And I will be there to help you discover that strength." That night, as he escorted her to her room, Jonathan realized he had never felt such responsibility and connection. Emily was no longer just a young girl he was saving, she was becoming a mirror of his own wounds, a reminder that the human heart could be rebuilt, even after years of loneliness and pain. And for the first time in a long time, he understood that their meeting was no accident. Two broken souls had found each other to heal together. The next few weeks were a mixture of excitement and nervousness for Emily. She discovered that the world could be both cruel and generous. Some students still judged her for her plain clothes or her shy manner, but she learned to stand up for herself, gently, confidently. The few friends she made were genuine and caring, and for the first time, Emily felt she could count on others besides Jonathan. At home, Jonathan watched her progress with silent attention. Every smile she shared, every success at school, was a personal victory for him. But there was something he couldn't ignore, the fear, ever present in Emily's eyes, and the painful memories she still carried. One evening, as Emily was timidly recounting an argument with a friend, Jonathan sat down next to her, the soft light of the lamp caressing his features. "Emily. I know this is hard," he murmured. "Sometimes the pain of the past comes back even when you think you've left it behind." Emily nodded, her eyes shining. She knew Jonathan spoke from experience. She had seen his sadness in his gestures, his silences, in that slight tremor when he remembered his lost sister. "You too, you're in pain, aren't you?" she asked softly. Jonathan remained silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on his hands. Then he spoke, for the first time in a truly intimate way. "Yes, Emily. I lost someone I loved very much. And for years, I thought I could ignore my pain by working, by accumulating wealth. But nothing replaces the emptiness that pain leaves." Emily felt a new connection. She understood that suffering wasn't a burden she carried alone. Jonathan, despite everything he possessed, also knew the weight of grief and loneliness. This revelation gave her courage and a sense of belonging she had never known. In the weeks that followed, Emily opened up more. She laughed more often, dared to express her opinions at school and at home, and even began to tell Jonathan about her dreams for the future, to become an artist, write stories, and help other young people like her. Jonathan, for his part, learned to free himself from his own pain through his protection and love for Emily. The bond between them grew stronger every day. Two broken souls, separated by different but similar experiences, were beginning to heal together. And in that house, behind the luxurious walls and the windows wide open to the world, a glimmer of hope persisted, that of two hearts that had found in each other the strength to rebuild. But deep down, Jonathan knew the road would be long. Life wasn't just a succession of pleasant days. Unexpected challenges still awaited them, ready to test their courage and resilience. And Emily, despite her newfound confidence, would discover that true strength lies not only in security, but in the ability to face the world's pain with determination and dignity. It was a sunny day, and the schoolyard was filled with the laughter and cheers of students. Emily had already begun to feel a little like she belonged. She had a few genuine friends and was beginning to understand the school's ethos. But life, as always, had a cruel way of testing even the most resilient. During lunch break, as she sat on a bench with her friends eating her lunch, a group of students known for their arrogance and mockery approached. One of them, a girl named Vanessa, pointed at Emily with a mocking smile. "So you're the millionaire's new protégé? It's like you're playing at being someone else." Emily felt her heart beat faster. The long-familiar fear rose within her. Her hands trembled, but she took a deep breath and remembered Jonathan's words, "You are stronger than you think." "Just because I have helped doesn't mean I'm not myself," Emily replied, her voice firmer than she expected. Vanessa burst out laughing, but a few students around them seemed surprised by Emily's courage. Tension rose, and Emily felt her body ready to flee, as it had so many times on the street. But instead of giving in to fear, she remained standing, her eyes fixed on Vanessa. Later that evening, Jonathan was waiting for her at home. Emily walked into the living room, her shoulders slightly slumped, but her eyes proud. "So, how did it go today?" Jonathan asked softly, but carefully. Emily recounted it all. The mockery, the laughter, the fear that had run through her, and most of all, the little spark of courage she had found within herself to respond. Jonathan took her by the shoulders and looked into her eyes. "You see, Emily, what you did today might not seem like much to some, but it's huge. Every time you face your fear, you become stronger. And it's not just me who notices, it's the world around you." Emily felt a tear roll down her cheek. She understood that true courage wasn't about being invincible, but about facing your fears, despite vulnerability and danger. That night, as she fell asleep in her warm room, Emily reflected on the day. For the first time in years, she felt able to stand up to the world. And Jonathan, looking out the window, realized that Emily would never again be a vulnerable girl on a street bench. They had both changed. One through love and protection, the other through courage and resilience. And together, they were beginning to discover that true strength lies in the combination of hope and determination in the face of adversity. One Saturday morning, Emily decided to walk alone around the neighborhood. She wanted to feel the freedom, breathe the city air, and discover the streets she had only known out of necessity. Jonathan had given her permission, but warned her to be careful. She was walking quietly, carrying a light bag on her shoulder, when she heard aggressive voices behind her. Two older, visibly violent teenagers were approaching quickly. "Hey, new girl!" one of them shouted. "Looks like you've got some money now. Give us your bag." Emily felt her heart race. For the first time since leaving the streets, she found herself facing a real threat. Her survival instincts took over, but this time, it wasn't fear that dominated, it was anger and determination. "No," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "This bag is mine." One of the boys laughed, ready to snatch the bag from her, but before he could act, a black car slowed a few meters away. Jonathan got out, his eyes filled with suppressed fury. In a few steps, he positioned himself between Emily and the teenagers, his imposing stature enough to intimidate them. "Leave her alone," he said coldly. "Now." The teenagers backed away, surprised and frightened by Jonathan's calm but overwhelming authority. One of them gave him one last contemptuous look before fleeing with his accomplice. Emily, trembling, threw herself into Jonathan's arms. thank you for coming," she whispered. "I was so scared." Jonathan held her close, feeling all the vulnerability she had had to carry alone for years. "Emily, you showed courage by staying put and defending yourself," he said softly. "But you don't have to face this kind of danger alone again. Never again." On the way home, Emily realized something essential: courage doesn't mean not being afraid, but facing your fears with someone you can count on. Jonathan wasn't just her protector, he had become a pillar of her life, a symbol of security and trust. This experience left a deep impression on Emily. She began to understand that life might still be hard and unfair, but she was no longer alone in facing it. And for Jonathan, every moment he saw her rise up, fight back, or smile despite it all was a powerful reminder of the value of his presence in this life. That day, under a slightly cloudy sky, they left the street where Emily had once been vulnerable. But this time, they walked together, united by an unbreakable bond, ready to face whatever life threw at them. The following days were marked by a mixture of routine and small victories for Emily. She became more involved in school, participating in art and literature classes, subjects she had always loved but had never had proper access to. Her drawings and writings, initially tentative, began to attract the attention of her teachers and even a few classmates who admired her talent. Jonathan watched each step forward with quiet pride. But even more, he realized that it wasn't just Emily who was changing. His own life, once centered around money and control, was transforming because of her. Emily's genuine laughter, her ability to marvel at simple things, reminded him of what he had lost from his youth and what he had long forgotten, the beauty of innocence, the strength of resilience, and the power of small things. One afternoon, as Emily was finishing a drawing of the bench where she had once slept, Jonathan entered the room. "It's beautiful," he said softly, his eyes shining with emotion. "You managed to transform pain into beauty." Emily looked down, a shy smile playing on her lips. "I don't do it just for myself. I want others to see that even when you've been alone and broken, you can create something beautiful." Jonathan felt his heart sink. He understood then that Emily's true strength lay not only in her resilience, but in her ability to inspire and transform pain into hope for herself and others. That evening at dinner, Emily recounted her day, the compliments from her teachers, the encouragement from her friends, and even the moments when she felt fear return but overcame it. Jonathan listened attentively, impressed by the maturity and wisdom the young girl was beginning to develop so quickly. "You know, Emily," he said, placing his hand on hers, "you teach me as much as I teach you. Every time I see you move forward despite your fears, I realize that I still have a lot to learn about life, love, and courage." Emily smiled, a new warmth lighting her eyes. For the first time, she felt that their relationship wasn't simply that of a protector and protégé, but of two people bound by respect, trust, and mutual understanding. That week, Emily participated in an art exhibition at school, displaying her drawing of the bench, and the night her life began to change. Visitors were touched by the story behind her work, and Emily felt a deep sense of pride. Jonathan, looking at her, understood that the unbreakable bond they shared was more than just protection, it was a force for transformation for both of them. And for Emily, every day became proof that even the deepest wounds could be transformed into something beautiful, as long as there was someone who believed in us, even in the darkest moments. One evening, as Emily was returning from an outing with her friends, she spotted a familiar figure in the shadows of an alleyway. Her heart raced. It was one of the young boys who had attacked her a few weeks ago. His cruel, mocking face reminded her of the long, fearful nights she had spent on the bench where she had slept. Instinctive fear tried to overwhelm her, but she remembered the lessons she'd learned over the past few months. Strength comes not from the absence of fear, but from the ability to act in spite of it. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and kept walking, refusing to run away this time. "Emily," the boy shouted, stepping out of the shadows. "Didn't they tell you to stay in your rich world?" Before he could approach, a firm hand landed on his shoulder. Jonathan appeared at his side, his face hard and protective. "You don't touch her," he said in a cold voice. The boy stepped back, surprised and intimidated by Jonathan's authority. Emily felt a mixture of fear and relief. But this time, she didn't throw herself behind Jonathan. She took a step forward, staring her attacker straight in the eyes. "You can't control me or scare me," she whispered. "I'm not who you once knew." The boy, confused and unsettled by Emily's courage, let out a snort and stepped back, disappearing into the darkness. Emily felt her legs tremble, but for the first time in a long time, the trembling wasn't from fear, it was from power, pride, and newfound freedom. Jonathan looked at her, a mixture of admiration and emotion in his eyes. "You did something incredible today, Emily," he said softly. "You faced your past, and you stood up for yourself." Emily smiled shyly, breathless. For the first time, she understood that her past didn't define her. Every scar, every fear overcome, had forged her inner strength. Back home, Emily collapsed onto her bed, tired but calm. Jonathan sat down beside her, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "You know," he whispered, "I've protected you all these weeks, but today, you protected yourself. And I've never been more proud of you." Emily felt tears welling up, but they weren't just tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of liberation, pride, and gratitude. She realized she had finally found a place where she could feel safe, not only because of Jonathan, but also because of her own strength. That night, Emily fell asleep with a new sense of power. She had faced her ghosts, and she knew that, as long as she remained true to herself, no obstacle could bring her down. Jonathan, watching Emily sleep, felt a deep emotion. Their bond was no longer just that of protector and protégé. It had become a living symbol of resilience, trust, and the silent love that heals even the deepest wounds. The weeks following the alley incident were marked by a visible transformation in Emily. At school, her classmates began to notice not only her courage, but also her determination and kindness. She was no longer the shy and vulnerable new girl, she had become a silent example of strength and resilience. In a literature class, her teacher asked her to read aloud a piece she had written about survival and hope. Emily, hesitant at first, looked up and read with clarity and emotion. Her words deeply impacted her classmates. Some burst into tears, others gave a tentative round of applause. For the first time, Emily felt the power of her voice and her story. Jonathan, who had been invited to attend the reading, watched silently from the back of the room. He felt his heart clench with emotion. Emily was no longer just protected, she was inspiring, transforming others with her truth and inner light. "You see," Jonathan murmured, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder after the reading, "you are stronger than you realize. And you have the power to change the world around you." Emily smiled shyly, but her eyes shone with a newfound determination. She understood that her life, once marked by fear and loneliness, could now be used to inspire others and bring hope. In the following days, Emily became involved in projects at school to help other students who felt isolated or struggling. She shared her story, offered encouragement and comfort, and with every smile she received in return, she felt her inner strength grow. Watching her evolve, Jonathan realized how much he, too, had been transformed. His life, once centered on material success and mastery, had been enriched with a human dimension he had never known. Emily had taught him to see the value in every gesture, the power of a kind word, the strength of a heart that refuses to break. One evening, as they sat together in the garden of the house, Jonathan said, "Emily, you showed me something I thought I had lost forever: hope, faith in goodness, and the strength to keep going despite everything." Emily snuggled up to him, silent but happy. She understood that their bond went far beyond protection or nurturing. They had become lifelong companions, each healing and inspiring the other. That night, Emily fell asleep with a sense of peace and pride. She had faced her fears, transformed her wounds into strength, and discovered that even the darkest experiences could become sources of inspiration. And Jonathan, looking at her serene face, knew that their meeting had changed both of their destinies forever. A few months later, Emily and Jonathan seemed to have found a stable and happy rhythm to their lives. Emily was excelling in school, building genuine bonds, and thriving in her artistic passions. Jonathan, on the other hand, had learned to open his heart and fully experience the emotions he had long repressed. But life, true to its unpredictable nature, had one final test in store for their strength and bond. One afternoon, as Emily was walking home from school with some friends, she saw a car suddenly stop near the curb. Two men quickly got out and began to follow her. Emily felt panic rising, but this time, fear wouldn't paralyze her. She knew she was no longer alone. "Emily!" Jonathan shouted, having rushed out of the house after receiving a call from the school principal. She ran toward him, but one of the men tried to hold her back. Jonathan reacted immediately, intervening with a speed and determination that made her tremble with emotion. In a few gestures, he put the intruders to flight, but the shock was still there. Emily felt her heart pound, but she remembered everything she had learned in the past few months: courage, confidence, resilience. "You were amazing, Emily," Jonathan said, hugging her. "But this must never happen again. I will always be there to protect you." Emily, despite the trembling in her hands, straightened up and said firmly, "I know, Jonathan. But I also feel like I can defend myself. And that I'm not the girl who was hiding on a bench anymore." Jonathan felt his eyes fill with tears. The young girl he had saved a few months ago had become a true force, a person capable of standing tall in the face of adversity. And yet, he knew that their bond went far beyond protection. It was an exchange, a symbiosis, where each learned and grew thanks to the other. That night they went home. Emily took her blanket and sat down next to Jonathan. "Thank you, for everything," she whispered. "For saving me, for teaching me to believe in myself, for showing me that the world can be beautiful." Jonathan hugged her, unable to hold back his tears this time. "No, Emily, you saved me," he said softly. "You reminded me that hope exists, that love can heal even the deepest wounds." And in the silence of the night, under the soft light of the house, they remained like that, united, aware that nothing could ever break the bond they had built. Emily's past, marked by fear and loneliness, had been transformed by courage and kindness. The present was filled with strength and confidence. And the future, despite its uncertainty, promised great things for this young girl and the man who had learned, thanks to her, that love and humanity surpass all the riches in the world. Thus ended the first arc of their story, a tale of survival, resilience and transformation, where two broken souls found in each other the strength to be reborn.